Selmo, I have especially prepared today's lesson for you on poetry. Okay, my birthday gift to you is going through examples of Hebrew poetry. All right, so it's a special day. All right. So today, what I'd like to do, the plan is to just do a very, very quick review on the figurative language. And then to basically, we're going to spend this morning going through many examples together from scripture of examples of figurative language, because I want you to get very familiar with it so that you can see these, see when the author uses these poetic devices. Okay. So with that, let's just quickly review what we've seen so far. Again, the three key elements of Hebrew poetry: the terseness, right? The short statements to convey emotion and energy and passion. Hebrew poetry also has structure, and that structure we've looked at with parallelism and acrostics. And then the third one, which is the biggest one, we'll spend the most time on this, is the imagery and poetic devices. And one of the key parts of the poetic devices, or one of the key elements, is figurative language. All right, figurative language. Those are words that convey an idea, but they're words that don't follow their exact definitions. For example, let me see, did I show that? Yeah. Let me just cover this for a minute. When we're looking at a passage and you see a statement made, and you would ask yourself, is this word or phrase or verse, is this figurative or not? And the way to figure that out, the way to identify if it's figurative or not, is just look at what's said and do the words follow their lexical, that is their dictionary definition in the sentence. If they do, then it's literal. If they don't, it's figurative. Let me give you an example. Here is my pet named Joe. He is a dog. Now, this statement, he is a dog, is that literal, do you think, or figurative? Look at
That's literal.
It's literal because I said I have a pet named Joe. All right, so he is a dog. It would make sense that that is a literal statement. Now, what if I said this? Here is my brother named Joe. He is a dog. Now, is that statement literal or figurative? He is a dog in this sentence.
Figurative.
Figurative here. Now I'm calling him a name. But we know it's figurative because I just said he's my brother. So we know he's a human. He's not an animal. He's not a dog. So when I say he is a dog, I must mean that figuratively. Maybe I'm mad at him, or I'm, something bothers me about him. Something like that. So in the first sentence, we know it's literal because of the context. I already said Joe is my pet. But in the second sentence, I said Joe was my brother. So this is how, again, as I said, the context tells us, or can help us know whether a word or a phrase or a sentence is intended to be literal or figurative. So when we're looking at passages together and trying to find the figurative language, just look for things in the verse where the words don't mean their exact definition. Again, for example, a dog normally, right, is a four-legged animal with a tail that barks. Okay. Now, in the first sentence, dog there can fit that definition. All right, because we know dogs are often pets. In the second sentence, that definition for dog does not fit, because my brother Joe is not literally a four-legged animal with a tail that barks. So I know this is figurative, because I know I'm speaking of my brother. All right. So that's just a clue as to whether or not the sentence or word or phrase that we're looking at is literal or figurative. Now, ways that words and phrases or clauses are used figuratively. Here's a summary. We covered all of these the last two sessions, and so I had asked you to review them, because we're going to be going through different examples from Scripture today. So let me just quickly remind you of them, and then we will be finding examples of these in passages in a moment. Okay. So comparison, the first one, comparison. This is probably, I would say probably the most commonly used figurative language in poetry. Comparisons compares one thing with another. In fact, I used an example of comparison in that previous example when I said he is a dog. Okay. That is actually a metaphor. All right. A metaphor is a direct comparison. I use the word is. He is a dog. Now, he's not literally a dog. It's a figurative expression. Simile makes a comparison. It's the weakest of comparisons, but it's a comparison. It uses words such as like or as. He is like a dog. That would be a simile. But if I were to say he is a dog, that's a metaphor. That's a stronger comparison. The strongest comparison would be hypocatastasis, where I just term that person dog. I don't say he's like a dog or he is a dog. I just say dog, or you dog, something like that. That's the strongest comparison. All right. There's another type of figurative language, that's hyperbole. That's using an exaggeration in order to bring emphasis. Attributing features. All right, there's three kinds that we looked at. There's personification, which is to attribute or give a human characteristic, or describe a human characteristic to an inanimate object. So trees clapping, the rivers shouting, the mountains quaking, those kinds of things. The rocks cry out. That's personification. That's describing an inanimate object, a non-living object, with human characteristics. Anthropomorphism is to attribute a human characteristic to God, right? That the eyes of the Lord, the mouth of the Lord, God, you cannot ward off God's hand, those kinds of things. Zoomorphism is attributing animal characteristics to God. We see some examples of that as well. Again, these are all what we would call attributing features, attributing attributing characteristics to one object from a different kind of object. Substitution, that's the fourth one we looked at. There's two kinds. These are the complicated words. I apologize for that. But like I said, if you can remember these words, then you can sound really smart when you tell them to other people. Metonymy, that is when you describe one object representing it with another. The pen is mightier than the sword, where the pen is representing something different, a writing that can have impact. So you're replacing or representing one object with something else. Synecdoche, that is to use part of an object to represent its whole. So if we were to say, my feet are on a level path. Well, it's not just my feet by themselves, right? You don't just see Tim's feet walking on the path without a body. Okay, so that's feet is being used there as a part of me, representing the whole of me, all of me. Apostrophe, or direct address, where you speaking to the poet's speaking directly to someone. Oh Lord, oh my soul, that kind of thing. Often you'll see the word. Often you'll see the letter O, the word oh God. Irony. That's where the poet or the author means something different. Or even opposite to what he says. Okay, we'll see some examples of that. Wordplay. That's where the poet uses a word or words that can sound like another word, or can look similar, be spelled similarly to that word, or to use a word that has a close meaning to what he's trying to communicate to someone else. I think I mentioned an example last week. If we were to say, Cagayan de Oro is a golden city. Okay, so that's a play on words. I'm playing on the meaning of the word oro there. Merism. That is to use two usually contrasting words to communicate the totality of something. Day and night. Sea to sea, from the rising of the sun to its setting. From east to west, those kinds of expressions. It communicates the whole, like the totality of something. The heavens and the earth, okay, represent all creation. Interjection, that is a word that's inserted in order to bring emphasis. Behold, woe, hoy. There's some different words like that are just interjections. Idiom. An idiom is an expression that the meaning, it's not discernible from the word. It's a phrase that developed over time to mean something completely different than what the words are used within the phrase. Let's see. We'll see some examples of that. I don't have one on top of my head right now. A rhetorical question. Now, a rhetorical question isn't necessarily figurative, but it's really not a question seeking an answer. It's a question given that doesn't expect an answer. It's used for dramatic effect. You're not that person, are you? Where the speaker knows the answer, but sort of puts it in the form of a question because that has a different effect on the hearer. So this list here is the all of the examples or types of figurative language that we looked at so far. Now, what I'm going to do is give you some passages, and we'll just go through. We'll each take a turn, and what I want you to do is identify what figurative language you see in the passage. And some of these passages may have more than one example of figurative language. So I'll do the first one just to show you. And again, remember, as you're looking at these verses, just look for anything in the verse where a word or a phrase or part of the verse isn't meant literally. The words used are not what the author is saying, if we were just take the definition. So for example, I'll do the first one just to show you. Psalm 1, 2-3. His delight is in the law of the Lord, and in his law he meditates day and night. He will be like a tree firmly planted by streams of water, which yields its fruit in its season. Okay, there's a couple here. Day and night. Okay, that is a merism. All right, day and night is a merism. Notice it takes day and night. It's an expression meant to communicate completeness, totality. He meditates all the time is the idea. All right, that's called merism. All right. Another, he will be like a tree. Okay. What is that an example of? Okay, remember it's a comparison being drawn here. Oh, I'm sorry. Arn, did you have something?
Good morning, Pastor. Comparison,
Morning.
Pastor.
What's that? Yeah, what we have here is a simile. Okay, again, remember that's a form of comparison. And it's a simile. It's the weakest form of comparison because he says he will be like a tree. Okay, so these are a couple of examples of figurative language, figures of speech that the author uses here. The rest of the statements here are literal. Okay, speaking of his delight is in the law of the Lord. That's a literal statement. In his law he meditates. That's a literal statement. But day and night is more figurative. It's not, otherwise, if he was literally meditating day and night, then he wouldn't ever be sleeping. He wouldn't ever be eating. He would die, most likely, unless the Lord miraculously sustained him. So it doesn't mean 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, every minute of every hour, but it's the idea, it's a figurative expression to say he meditates constantly. All right, he will be like a tree. That is figurative because he's a man, he's not a tree, but he's being compared to a tree. And then the rest of this is literal, it's describing the tree. Okay, are there any questions on this one? All right, James, we're going to start with you since you're the great poet of our class. So we're going to give you the first one here. James, go ahead and read the passage and then identify any figurative language that you see here. Okay?
Okay. Psalm 98, verse 8. Let the rivers clap their hands. Let the mountains sing together for joy. So the rivers. I'm looking for my notes.
No problem. Go ahead. That's fine. What you can do is just take each line and just ask yourself first, okay, let the rivers clap their hands.
Clap their hands.
That literal.
Yes. No.
It's not.
Yes.
So what kind of figure of speech is this, you think? What can clap? What claps their hands?
It's clap their hands. Rivers.
Do rivers have hands?
No.
No. What has hands?
Man.
Man.
Yeah, people do, right?
Yeah.
What figure of speech is it when you're saying that a non-living object has human characteristics? Do you remember what that's called?
Personification.
Yes, there you go. Personification.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, good.
Let the mountains sing together for joy.
All right. Is that literal?
Personification. Not literal.
It's not literal, right? And again,
Yes.
what sings? What can sing for joy?
Human.
Yeah. Humans.
Human, yes, that's it. Still personification.
It's another, yeah, he uses two examples of personification here.
Yeah.
You see that? Where human characteristic is being attributed or describing a non-human object in this case. Okay, good. All right. Pastor Allen, we're going to give you the next one.
For I will not trust in my bow, nor will my sword save me. It's not literal.
I will not trust in my bow. That statement, I will not trust, is literal, but there's something about bow and sword here.
Yeah. Bow is not. Okay.
They represent something.
It represents something.
This one's a little tougher.
It's a metaphor for
If it were a metaphor,
protection or defense or.
well, a metaphor would be something like, would say, you know, he is my sword, okay? Or something like that. He's not comparing here something. He's actually, bow and sword are used to represent all weapons.
Okay. So that's I forgot the word.
Yeah, it's one of those hard ones.
The opposite
Is it
of
merism?
personification.
Not merism. Merism would be like day and night, or it's
There's
is
another
this is
metonymy.
This is an example of substitution. It's one of those two types of substitution where bow and sword, they represent all weapons. They are one weapon that represents all weapons.
Not metonymy, Pastor Tim.
No, the other one. You remember it?
Forgot the word.
Yeah, somebody said it.
Is it interjection?
Synecdoche.
Synecdoche. The opposite of personification.
No, it's not personification because he's not describing them with human characteristic. One part represents.
The opposite, I think, Pastor. The opposite of personification.
I think the apostrophe.
No,
No, that would be
synecdoche.
direct address. Here it's
Synecdoche. Okay.
yeah, synecdoche. Yeah, the bow represents all weapons.
Okay.
Or the sword represents all weapons, because there's also shield and spear and knife. But what David is saying here is, I will not trust in my weapons. And so he uses bow and sword to represent all kinds of weapons. That makes sense?
Yeah.
That's a hard one.
Synecdoche.
It's called the synecdoche. Yeah, that's where one part of something represents the whole. And here the part is bow, sword are types of weapons or weapons. Like that's the best I can do to describe it. This was a tough example. I probably should give that later. It's probably too early to give this one. It's pretty difficult.
And the pronunciation also, Pastor Tim, difficult.
Yeah.
Synecdoche.
Yeah. Yeah, you pronounce it sin ek do e. Synecdoche. Or sorry, synecdoche. Synecdoche. Yeah. That's just what they called it. So here, let's Alan, let me give you another shot at this. Try this one. Psalm 22, verse 16. Oh, let me here before we go on, let me no, that's okay. Go ahead. Psalm 22.
It pierced my hands. Pierced my hands.
Go ahead and read it out
Thomas
loud,
Martin.
and then you can.
It's for me, Pastor Tim.
Yeah, Alan. Yeah, go ahead. I'll give you another one.
For dogs have surrounded me. A band of evildoers has encompassed me. They pierced my hands and my feet. So dogs there is not literal.
Correct. And how do you know that?
Because he's talking about those evildoers, which means his enemies.
Yes. And notice here, this is where parallelism can help us understand it, because notice there's synonymous parallelism here, right? Dogs have surrounded me. A band of evildoers has encompassed me. That's parallelism, synonymous. So we know that dogs and evildoers are being compared here, right? So we know dogs is not literal. He's not saying all these dogs are around me. He's saying these evildoers. He's calling them dogs, right? Now, do you remember what kind of, so this is a form of comparison. What kind of?
Yeah.
Oh, the other hard word.
Another hard word. Yeah. Yeah, that one. It's this is a metaphor, but there's a specific
Stronger than a
word for it.
Hypo.
I think it's the strongest.
Yeah, hypo.
Hypo.
Hypocatastatic.
Stasis.
Statis.
All right. That is,
Hypocatastasis. Okay.
all
The
right.
strongest form.
Because here he's just saying they're dogs. He doesn't say
Like dogs.
that they are like dogs or they are dogs. He just says dogs have surrounded me. All right. So this is a strong comparison. He's calling these evildoers
Hypocatastasis.
dogs.
Hypocatastasis.
Yeah. Hypocatastasis. All right.
Hypocatastasis.
Yeah. It might be helpful, guys, to I don't know if here, if you guys want to take a picture of this. Let me see if I can do this. I'm gonna try to make this fit on the screen here, and maybe you guys can take a picture of it or something so that you can use it to look at it while we're going through these examples. So you have the list with you. You don't have to. Let me do this. All right.
See, Brother James, you have a handy código, huh?
All right. Can you guys maybe with your phones or something take a picture of that? And oops, one more. Sorry. Sorry, hold on a second here. There. What? Okay. Yeah, maybe try to take a picture of that, and then you can have that with you as we're going through this. It'll help to have the list next to you so you can look at it while we're.
Hypocatastasis. Hypocatastasis.
Yeah, there's that word.
Hypocatastasis.
All right. Did everybody get a picture of this or take a screenshot or something so that you have it? I think that'll make it a little easier.
Pastor Tim, all these are under the category of figurative language?
Yes.
Okay.
Figures of speech. Okay, did everybody get the list there? All right, let's go to the next example. I'll have Brother Arn, if you could do the next example for us. It is Psalm 10, verse 7. Go ahead and read the passage and then let us know what you see. Oh, you need to unmute yourself, brother.
Psalm chapter 10, verse 7. His mouth is full of curses and deceit and oppression. Under his tongue is mischief and wickedness. It is easier for us if you don't call. Okay, it's just like comparison, Pastor.
Okay, what part?
It's talking about mouth and then full of curses and deceit and oppression, and also his tongue is mischief and wickedness. Is it metaphor, Pastor? Am I right?
Okay, well, let's look at, there's a few here, so let's break it down. All right.
Okay.
His mouth is full of curses and deceit and oppression. So is that literal? Is there something called curses and deceit, some object in his mouth? Huh? So is that literal?
I think so.
Well, so is there a physical object called curses that you can put in your mouth? No, right? There's not.
Yes.
If you were to say his mouth is full of
Curses.
balut, okay, that's literal. But curses is not a physical object, right? So you can't have, a person can't fill his mouth with curses because that's not a literal object. So this expression is figurative in some way. Okay? The question is, in what way is it figurative?
Sa imote na ko'y isend nga i-share sa imong YouTube. I-follow.
What do you think?
Is it substitution?
Substitution? Okay, in what way? What is being substituted?
His mouth is full of curses. It's like, Pastor, metonymy.
Think about, is what's this statement describing? What does it mean? His mouth is full of curses and deceit and oppression. What is that saying?
His mouth is full of bad.
Yeah, well, it's not literally his mouth though, right?
Yes.
It's describing something about this person, right? What's it saying about this person?
Would it not be anthropomorphism?
I'm sorry, say that one more time.
Anthropomorphism?
Oh, anthropomorphism. Well, no, because it is a person. A person has a mouth, but is I mean, what is that describing? If I were to say your mouth is full of curses, what am I saying about you?
Is it
Is it irony, Pastor?
No, because the author's not saying something opposite to what he means.
Sir,
Yeah.
excuse me.
Rio.
It seems that near to the idiom, sir. It's not literal.
Correct.
it's
His mouth-
hyperbole?
Yeah, well, there is hyperbole. Okay, where's the hyperbole here?
Full.
Exaggeration.
Full of curses. So that's
Full of.
hyperbole. All right, good. So that's one. What else is there? To say his mouth is full of curses and deceit and oppression means what? It's referring to
Is it an interjection?
right? It's what he says. It's describing his speech. He's cursing. He's deceitful. He speaks oppressive things. So it's
Hypocatastasis?
no, because he's not. It's not comparison. This is an idiom. All right. It is an expression that means something different than what it's saying. It refers to what it says is he speaks evil. Technically, he speaks lies, deception. Right? That's what he's saying, right?
So refers to an expression.
But he doesn't say he speaks. Notice he says his mouth is full of. So it's a different way to say it. But it's a picture, right? Think of like picture Pastor Michael, and he's very hungry, and he's putting all of this rice in his mouth, right? Okay, we would say his mouth is full of rice, meaning like his whole mouth, everything inside of his mouth is rice, right? He just ate so much rice.
Is it a metaphor?
No, it's an idiom. It's a picture. He's describing the person's speech.
So refers to an expression.
Yeah, so he's using an expression to represent his speech by saying that all that he speaks is lies and evil and deceit. But instead of saying it that way, he gives a picture that is full of these things, like food is stuffed in there.
So it's an idiom, Pastor Tim.
It's called an idiom.
Idiom. Okay.
It's an expression that doesn't mean literally what it says. It means something else. All right?
Not discernible. No, not discernible from the words used.
Yeah. So it's saying here that his mouth is full of curses. Well, for one, curses isn't a real thing that you can put in your mouth. Okay? Right? It's not like rice. You can put rice in your mouth. You can put your finger in your mouth. But you cannot put curses in your mouth. So to say that his mouth is full of curses is to be saying that his words, his speech is all lies and deceit and speaking against others. And it's the same in the second line. Under his tongue is mischief. It's not like, okay, look under my tongue. Can you see mischief there? Well, no, it's not literal. It's an expression to say what comes out of his mouth is deceit, evil, lies, hurting others, cursing others. So it's a way to give a picture of just like someone's mouth could be full of food and that's all that comes out. in the same way, what he's saying here is this person's speech is what comes out of his mouth is his speech, right?
Yes.
Talking about speech.
So
Okay,
under his
mouth,
tongue, Pastor, it's idiom again.
well, mouth and, yeah, the second one would be that way as well. Mouth and tongue are, they represent speech. Remember, we call that metonymy, or in this case,
Wow.
yeah, metonymy. Well, one thing
Pastor
represents
Tim,
another, right? He's
Yes.
not speaking of the literal mouth and tongue, but he's referring to the instruments that are used to speak. It's the speech that's the focus here. That's the meaning.
Substitution.
His words, his speech is lies, curses, deceit, mischief, wickedness. And so it's a figurative expression to describe a person's speech, as being full of these evil things.
Okay.
Pastor Tim. Yes, yes, it does make sense. It's just another way of saying you have bad breath.
Yeah.
Just joking. Just want to make a graceful exit. I have to go, Pastor Tim. Sorry to everyone.
All right. We hope your injection goes well.
Yeah. Thank you.
So the words mouth and tongue, Pastor, is belong to substitution.
Yeah, mouth and tongue represent speech. So it's not talking about a literal mouth and a literal tongue. So I would say it's metonymy, it's substitution. He's substituting the idea of speech with the words mouth and tongue. All right. So again, we know it's figurative because he's not saying there's literally some mischief and wickedness that are literally under his tongue. That's not. Mischief and wickedness are not physical objects that you can put in your mouth. But this is just a way to say that he speaks, what he says is wicked or leads to evil, mischief. Okay? Let's try some others. I'll put this in your notes. You can look at it later in the handout that I give, and maybe that might help a little bit as well. Okay, let's try. I think this one will be a little more straightforward. I'll have Pastor Noor take this one. Psalm 2, verse 10.
Psalm 2, verse 10. Now therefore, O kings, show discernment. Take warning, O judges of the earth.
Okay, so
yes.
So what do you see here? He's giving two commands. Do these commands sound literal? Do you think they mean what he's saying?
Metonymy.
Is his command to show discernment? Do you think that's literal? Like he means he's telling the king, show discernment, show understanding. Do you think that's a literal statement?
Yes, it is literal.
It is literal.
Yes.
And the second one is as well. Take warning, judges of the earth. That's literal as well. But notice here, O kings and O judges. That's a poetic expression. You remember what we called that?
Personification? No.
No, he's not. describing them. They're humans already. That word "oh" should give you a clue. Remember, when I say "oh kings," if I were to say "oh Nor," what is that? What's that called?
It's hard to pronounce.
Interjection.
Apostrophe.
Yeah, I heard it. Apostrophe or direct address.
Apostrophe.
Okay. The poet here is directly addressing kings and judges. So he wants to draw attention, especially to those groups of people. So he calls them out in the poem. He says, therefore, O kings. That's direct address, or it's called apostrophe. You can think of it like this: apostrophe. The O, apostrophe.
All
right.
All
right. This is important to spot because it conveys, it makes it more personal, more direct, right? If he just said, therefore show discernment, all right, that could apply to anybody potentially. But he says specifically, O kings, to make clear he's directly addressing a certain group of people in this case. So it's not, in this case, it is literal, it's literal kings, but it's a poetic device to express, like I said, sort of intimacies, making it personal, directly addressing the kings in this case and judges. So it's called, again, apostrophe or direct address, when you directly address someone. All right, let's see. I'll show you. Let's go. There's another example of this. Noor, can you do this one? Psalm 24:7.
Psalm 24, verse 7. Lift up your hands, O gates. Oh, that is the personification. No?
Okay. Yes. What is the personification here?
Gates, a personified like as human.
Yeah, it's describing gates with heads, right?
Yes.
Gates don't have heads. Literal heads. So yeah, good. So heads, this is personification. It's giving a human characteristic to a non-human object. So gates don't have heads. So it's a picture though of like a being called to like stand at attention. Right? That's what you would tell your kids, right? If someone important comes over, you say, lift up your heads. Don't look down. Look up. Stand at attention. Show respect. Well, that's exactly what's being done here. And then also notice, O gates. We just saw that in the last passage. What is that called? Direct address, remember?
Apostrophe.
Yeah, apostrophe. Okay. So there's two poetic devices here. One is figurative, lift up your head, and gates don't have heads. It's a picture of something else. It's a figure of speech called personification. Okay. All right.
Sir Tim, but what do you mean by gates?
A gate here is the literal, the gate is the literal gate. It's the gate of the city. The entrance to a city.
Yeah, I understand that, but what is teaching there?
Oh, the Psalm, here, you can look at it. Psalm 24. Lift up your head, O gates, and be lifted up, O ancient doors, that the King of glory may come in. Who's the King of glory? The Lord, strong and mighty. The Lord mighty in battle. Lift up your heads, O gates, and lift them up, O ancient doors, that the King of glory may come in. Who is the King of glory? The Lord of hosts. He is the King of glory. So it's a picture of the king entering the city, the Lord entering the city. So as he's entering the city, the psalmist says to the gates, show respect, stand at attention, lift up your heads, because the King of glory is coming in. That makes sense?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And actually, notice we see a couple of other, who is this King of glory? That's a rhetorical question. All right, we know the answer. The poet knows the answer, but he asks it in the form of a question. That's a rhetorical question. And then there's repetition. Lift up your head, O gates. Be lifted up, O ancient doors. Lift up your head, O gates. Lift them up, O ancient doors. There's apostrophe here. O ancient doors. O gates. All right? Those are all poetic devices. And the image here, all of these devices help to portray the image of God entering the city. And even because God's entering the city, he tells the gates to stand at attention in honor of the King of glory coming into the city. All right. And so that's a poetic way to say, we need to show God glory and respect. All right. Did that answer your question, Pastor Noor?
Yes, yes, thank you.
All right, good. Anselmo, let me have you do this one. It's Proverbs 17.
A joyful heart is good medicine.
What is that?
I try to look for my código, sir.
No problem.
It seems like a metaphor because there is in the middle.
Yeah, right, metaphor. Remember, metaphor is a comparison. And here the comparison is a joyful heart is good medicine. Okay, that's the joyful heart's being compared to good medicine. Okay, good medicine is a benefit. It brings health to someone, right? And that's what a joyful heart does. That's what this proverb is saying. And it's a metaphor because he says a joyful heart is good medicine. Now, what if he had said a joyful heart is like good medicine? What is that called?
Simile, sir.
Yeah, that'd be a simile. Okay. But here he gives a stronger comparison. He says is good medicine. All right. Good. Okay. And someone try this one.
Psalms 103 verse 12. As far as the east is from the west, so far has he removed our transgression from us. From east to west. I try to look again, sir, in my...
Yeah, no problem. That's why we're doing these examples, so you guys can start getting used to being able to see these and spot the different kinds of devices, figures of speech.
Would it be a simile?
Well, again, a simile, if there was a simile here, you would be looking for something
Yes.
that is like. but we don't see that here. Remember, simile is comparison.
Oh,
Okay, notice the expression, the east and the west.
That's
Really?
No, this
No.
not a comparison here.
A metaphor.
No, because he's not saying something is east and west. He's describing God has removed our transgressions so far from us, as far as, remember when they talked about east? Look at
I'll
east.
try to guess, sir.
What's that?
I try to guess.
Okay, go ahead.
I think, sir, it's near to a hyperbole, sir.
Maybe hyperbole would be exaggeration. Now think about it. Does God, what is it saying here? God's removed our sins like as far as the east is from the west. How far is that? It's a long way, right?
English.
Has God done that with our sins? I mean, in a sense,
Distance.
he's removed them extremely far away. Remember, I said there was an expression using opposite words to
Merism?
Merism, like a merism.
Merism?
Idiom.
Totally.
remember that expression? A merism.
Merism.
Where is it?
The
Yes, sir.
merism.
Thank you.
Merism.
East and west, those are opposite expressions to describe like the totality of something or the completeness or the vastness, the all-inclusiveness. So I think this is an example of a merism.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
All right. I know these are hard. You got to get used to them. That's why we're doing examples. Michael, you want to try this one?
Not in Gath, with not at all. At Bethly Apra, house of dust, roll yourself in the dust.
Yeah, and I put here, House of Dust is actually, I put that there. That's the translation for Bethla Ephra. That's what that word means. It's a city, but it literally means house of dust.
In Gath.
Oh,
Okay, with not at all.
So is he telling the people in this town literally to roll yourself in the dust? Is that literal?
No, it's a figurative.
Yeah, it's figurative.
Mm-mm.
And what
An
picture
idiom.
is that, or what do you think he means?
Idiom.
Yeah, it's an idiom. Good. It's an expression where the words in the expression don't mean their exact definition. It's an idiom meaning to refer to being humbled or repentant. Right? They would throw dirt on themselves when they were humiliated. Remember, that was an ancient Near East practice. So that's what he's telling them here. You're going to be humbled, defeated. And then notice too, he says, the city is called House of Dust, and he says, roll yourself in the dust. So he's doing something else there too. Do you remember what that's called?
House of dust.
He's using their name, and then he says something based on their name. Remember what that's called?
is
It's a play on
Play on words. Fun.
words or a pun.
wordplay, pun.
Okay, he's referring to their name and telling them to do something specific to their name.
Wordplay.
Throw yourself in the dust. So he didn't mean literally for them to do that, but he used that expression, one, to mean you're going to be humbled, but two, he refers to dust because their name of their city is House of Dust. So that's a play on words. Okay. Okay. Michael, try this one. This is a New Testament example.
He answered them, I told you already, and you did not listen. Why do you want to hear it again? You do not want to become his disciples too, do you?
Remember, this is the blind man who was being interrogated by the Pharisees, and they kept asking him over and over, who healed you? So finally, after all of that, this is what he responded to them. Now, do you think he meant this literally? You want to become his disciples? Yeah, I think he was speaking figuratively here. Okay, did he know the answer to this question? Did you think? Did the Pharisees want to become his disciple, Jesus' disciples?
No.
No, they didn't.
Rhetorical question.
Yeah, one, it's a rhetorical question, all right, because he knew the answer. And there's a second poetic device here called irony, right? The speaker meant the opposite of what he said. Okay, he knew they didn't want to become his disciples. So he asked a question that's ironic. You don't want to become his disciples too, do you? Well, he was being sarcastic or ironic there because he knew they didn't. But so I was assuming this verse, I was assuming you need to know the story to know what's going on here. So his first question, why do you want to hear it again? Okay, that was a legitimate question. Why do you keep asking me this? And then his second question was the figure of speech, where he used irony, because he says, oh, do you want to become his disciples too? Right, well, he knew that wasn't the case. And the second is it's a rhetorical question. He already knew the answer to it. But by doing it that way, it sort of draws more attention to what he's saying. Okay. All right. Okay, well, we're losing everybody here. Everyone's leaving us. Okay. Pastor Arn, we're going to come back to you and give you this one. Psalm 23:1.
Psalm 23 verse 1, the Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. The Lord is comparing to my shepherd. Is that comparison, Pastor?
It's a comparison. Good. What do you remember? What kind? The Lord is my shepherd.
Is it metaphor?
Yes. Excellent. It's a metaphor. Okay. It's a comparison, and it's a strong comparison because he says the Lord is my shepherd. Right. So what he's doing here in this comparison is he's saying the Lord is my shepherd, and his audience would know what that meant because they know what a shepherd is. They know, a shepherd protects the flock, cares for his flock, and provides for his flock. And so when David uses this comparison, what he compares to helps people understand. It's telling them something about the Lord because they know what a shepherd is. They know what a shepherd does. And so when he says the Lord is my shepherd, his hearers would know, oh, That means he protects us, he provides for us, he leads us, he watches over us. Okay, they would know all those things about the Lord because of this comparison. Okay, that's why comparison is a very strong or helpful form of figure of speech. He's not literally saying the Lord is a shepherd. God doesn't literally stand watch over sheep at, in the fields. All right, but this is figurative. He's describing the Lord that David is like a sheep and God is his shepherd, and God treats him like a shepherd treats his sheep. That's the idea. The comparison is God treats the poet like a shepherd treats his sheep. Okay?
Thank you.
All right, very good, Arn. Try this one. You did so good on the last one. We'll give you another one.
Psalm 91 verse 4, he will cover you with his pinions, and under his wings you may seek refuge. His faithfulness is a shield and bulwark.
All right, so take these statements together. He will cover you with his pinions. Is all that literal? No, does God have pinions or claws?
Is it figurative, Pastor?
I'm sorry?
Is he speaking about figuratively?
It's figurative, right? Because God doesn't have pinions. He doesn't have, claws like a bird. That's what these are. These are, bird claws. All right. So God doesn't have bird claws, so it's figurative. But what is that? He's describing God with animal features.
Zoomorphism, Pastor?
Yes. Very good. His pinions. That's called zoomorphism. That's describing God with animal characters. And notice there's another one.
Under his wings.
His wings. Yeah, again, God doesn't have wings here, but that's a figure of speech. Now, what this does is, though, this gives us a picture. Again, the poet's trying to communicate a truth through imagery. So he's describing God as having claws and wings like a bird that is protecting its young. That's the picture. This is a picture of God's protection. And then he gives another figure of speech. His faithfulness is a shield and a bulwark. What is that called?
Is that a comparison, Pastor?
It's a comparison. What kind?
Is metaphor?
Yes. It's a metaphor. Now notice, by the way, guys, this is helpful. There's two images here. You see them. One image is God as like a bird that its young, its chicks come under its protection. The second image is like God's faithfulness is like a shield or a bulwark, a big structure that protects from a storm. Both of these images, convey or describe protection, but a different kind of protection. The first image is of a bird protecting its young. That's an image of intimacy, care, right?
Amen.
The second image is of a large structure protecting us in a storm. Okay, this one is an image of power.
Wow.
See that? So here the psalmist is able to convey or show the idea of protection in two different ways. One is a tender protection, like a, you know, like a bird for its chicks, or like a, you know, like a parent for its child. That's a tender care. The second image is one of power, like the image is a, you know, of a bulwark, something that's protecting against a storm or something like that. Okay, so if you were to preach this passage, you would want the principle is that God is a protection, but the way he protects, there's two different ways described here that you would want to point out. That God protects us not only in power, that he can protect us from anything, but also that his protection is tender, care. There's care there, intimacy. Okay. Guys, any questions on that? All right, this is where we can see how poetic language can convey a truth, but convey it in a way that gives us a picture of it. And here we see two different pictures because there's two different aspects of God's protection that the poet is trying to show us. Okay. All right. That's good, Arn. Alan, Pastor Alan, I'm going to give this one to you. Psalm 121, verse 2.
Psalm 121, verse 2. My help comes from the Lord, who made heaven and earth. My help comes from the Lord. It's a very simple statement.
Yeah, just ask yourself, is this literal?
My help comes from the Lord.
Yeah.
That's literal.
Yeah, it's literal.
Yeah, literal.
Okay, who made heaven and earth? Okay, that's a literal statement also. But notice the way he describes, we have heaven and earth there.
Yeah.
What is that?
So it's a merism.
Yes, it's a merism.
Merism.
Describing, you know, all the universe, basically.
All the universe, yeah.
Right?
Heaven and earth.
Heaven and earth, everything. It's a merism. It's a way to describe that. Okay, this was a simple one. That's all that we had here. So we'll give you, let's give you this one as well, Pastor Alan.
Okay, Proverbs 11:22. Like a gold ring in a pig's snout is a beautiful woman without discretion. Without discretion. Like a gold ring. So it's a simile.
Yeah, very good.
The first statement is a simile.
Yeah, this whole verse is one, right?
Yeah.
A gold ring and a pig snout is a beautiful woman without discretion, like a gold ring. Okay? Now, so he's saying a beautiful woman without discretion, and he's comparing that, is like a gold ring and a pig snout.
Yeah.
Okay? Now, something interesting here to notice. So this whole verse, is a simile. Now, one thing I want you to notice. Take a look at that first word, like. Notice it's in italics. Okay? This is a New American Standard Translation. And
which means it's not there, the original.
It's not there in the original. Okay, so technically we should this verse literally reads, a gold ring in a pig's snout is a beautiful woman without discretion. So it's not a simile, actually.
So it's becoming more, it becomes stronger.
Yes. Yeah, the literal translation is a metaphor.
Metaphor.
The word like is not in the original Hebrew. So actually, Solomon said here in this proverb, he didn't say like a gold ring. He said a gold ring. Fixed snout is a beautiful expression. So it's really a metaphor. It's a stronger comparison. So the translation actually weakens the comparison a little bit by adding that word like. All right. It was trying to show us that a comparison's being made. And so they put in that word like, but in doing that, they actually weakened the point of the original author, because he didn't say like, he said is. So this is just a reminder, man. Look for, whenever you see words italicized, pay attention. Okay? Because that means the word actually isn't there. The translation put it there. Okay, so if you're to teach this passage, you would say this is a strong comparison being made. Not, he didn't use a simile here, he used a metaphor. All right, so just pay close attention. So technically, if you were to say this is a simile, actually, I don't think that's Proverbs 11:22. I think I got the verse wrong there. Let me see. No, it is. Okay. So let me see. What does the ESV do? Like. Most translations use the word like here. I don't know why, because it's not in the original. It's really a metaphor that he's using. Any questions on that? Okay. Good, Alan. Very good. All right, this one, there's a lot going on. Michael, let me throw this one at you. Psalm 8, verse 3. Go ahead and read it, Michael, and then tell us what you see.
When I consider your heavens, the work of your fingers, the moon and the stars which you have ordained. When I consider your heavens, the work of your fingers. That is.
Okay, just go through each phrase, each clause.
Okay.
When I consider your heavens, you think that's literal?
No.
When I think about your heavens.
It's a figurative, Pastor Tim.
Okay, in what way?
The moon and the stars, right? It's when I consider your heavens. It's a figurative, Pastor.
What part is figurative?
Your heavens.
So you don't think he's talking about literal heavens there, like the skies, the stars?
Yeah. He's talking about the moons and the stars.
Yeah, so he is,
Heavens, yeah.
he's literally thinking about, right, what's in the sky. But notice he
Literal.
says the work of your fingers. Does God have fingers?
No.
So what is that? Remember what that's called?
The work of your fingers.
Anthropomorphism.
Yeah, I heard somebody say it. Anthropomorphism. Remember that's attributing
Okay, attribute
human features
human characteristics.
to God. Okay, God doesn't have fingers, but he's described in that way here. Or how about the moon and the stars? Do you think, what's he talking about there? What does that represent? We've already seen this a couple of times. When you're trying to represent the totality of something,
Okay. Oh,
Synecdoche.
no, it's not a substitution.
merism.
Merism, there you go. Okay, good.
Okay.
Now, and this one would be harder to know, but normally the phrase "the work of your hands" is often made when it's speaking of but here he uses the word finger.
Yeah.
So actually, this idea of someone said this word already, synecdoche, is being used here because finger represents the whole hand.
Okay.
Normally, if you look this statement up, and I wouldn't expect you to know this, but normally, when it speaks of creation, often the phrase is given the work of your hands.
Yes.
Here it says fingers. So the finger is the part of the hand. So it's a synecdoche. It's using one part of something to represent the whole thing. So it's very
So
subtle.
it's not anthropomorphism.
Well, finger is, yeah, there's two things going on. Fingers, we've already noted that here. Where's my cursor? You've already noted that here, fingers, that's an anthropomorphism, okay? But also, if we understand that the normal idiom is the work of your hands when speaking of God creating the universe. And so fingers is an odd, I think the only time that it's said God, that the heavens, that God created with by his fingers, usually says hands. So that's something you'd want to note and ask, why does he use fingers here? Why doesn't he just say the work of your hands? That's the normal way they would say it. So there's something else going on here. So David uses a synecdoche, finger, to represent the hand in order to draw attention to a particular truth. And then finger is also an anthropomorphism, as you said, Michael.
Okay.
Okay, so there's sometimes you'll see more than one figure of speech used at the same time.
In the same phrase.
Yeah. All right. Anselmo, let me give you the next one here. Psalm 89, verse 6.
Psalms 89, verse 6. For who in the skies is comparable to the Lord? Who among the sons of the Almighty is like the Lord?
Oops, should be. Okay. Is this a question? This is a question. Is it a question that the poet knows the answer to? Is he expecting an answer? What's the
No.
obvious answer? Right? You remember what that's called? When a question is asked and the answer is obvious, or it's not expected to be answered because it's obvious?
I think, sir, rhetorical question.
Yes. These are rhetorical questions. They're not questions seeking information. The poet already knows the answer. Okay? No one is comparable to the Lord. No one is like the Lord. He knows that. But he presents this truth in the form of a question because that gives greater emphasis to it. All right. Brio, why don't you try this one, Psalm 3.
Psalm 3, verse 7. Rise, O Lord, save me, O my God. For you have smitten all my enemies on the cheek. You have scattered the teeth of the wicked. We meet that before because of O.
Yeah. You see that? Oh Lord. Oh my God. What was that called when you have that?
Apostrophe.
Yep, I heard somebody say it.
Apostrophe.
Apostrophe.
Yes, sir.
Apostrophe or direct address.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Good. Anything else? You have smitten all my enemies on the cheek. Did he mean that literally? Did God come down and strike his enemies literally in the face? Smitten means to basically to strike or hit. So did God literally hit all of the enemies on the cheek? Or is that figurative?
No, sir.
Anthropomorphism.
Not literal, sir.
It's not literal. It's a form of anthropomorphism, I guess, because God, is kind of being described as hitting. So I could see that. There's also another figure of speech going on here. This one's again, these are probably the harder ones. Remember we called it an idiom? That's an expression where all the words together don't mean exactly the definition of the words. It's to smitten means the idea of humiliating, defeating, bringing harm. So instead of saying you defeated my enemies, he's saying you've smitten them on the cheek or you've shattered the teeth. That's another one. So both of them are idioms. You have smitten on the cheek. You have shattered the teeth. Yeah, those aren't literal. They're figurative. And both of these are examples of idiom. An idiom which conveys the idea of humiliating or defeating. Okay. All right. Pastor Noor, let's have you do the next one here.
Proverbs 9, verse 1, wisdom has built her house. I'm out. She has hewn out her 7 pillars. That is my favorite personification.
Yes. All right, on. You got it. Okay, wisdom has built. That's personification. Wisdom is not a human, it's a concept. So wisdom is built, or also she has hewn. That's personification. Good. Okay, I think that's the only one here. He uses personification twice. All right, great job. James, give me this one.
Psalm 42:3. My tears have been my food day and night, while they say to me all day long, where is your God? Day and night is, what is that? Day
Yeah.
and night.
We've seen it a few times.
Yes. And I forgot.
Okay.
Hyperbole.
It's representing the totality of something.
Merism.
Yeah, it's
All day.
merism. Right? Means all the time. Okay, good. What else?
All day long.
All day long.
Yeah, all day long. What is that? Is that literal? Is he actually crying?
Merism.
Not a merism is the day and night, where it's two opposites being used. Here, if he had said all night and day, that would be a merism. But here he just says all day long. Does he mean that literally?
No, figurative speech. Figurative.
It's figurative. It's an exaggeration, right? Which we called hyperbole. Right? And in fact, he says, my tears have been my food.
Yeah.
Is that literal?
No.
No.
No, he's not eating his tears. But it's, what do you think that is? You think that's exaggeration?
Since exaggeration, my ears have been my food. Does exaggeration assert sin?
I think so. What do you guys think?
Yeah. Exaggeration.
Yeah.
Exaggeration.
Okay, so that would be hyperbole, right?
Yeah. Yes.
All right. So we see a lot of
Thank you.
hyperbole here, right? Because there's great emotion. Here, David is feeling overwhelmed. Okay, how about while they say? Who is the they here?
The unbelievers.
Yeah, probably.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So good job on this one. Let's see. We got time. Let's do one more. One more here. We'll do
Where is your God?
oh yeah, where's your God? What could that be?
That's a rhetorical question.
Yeah. Yeah, the answer is known. Really. So it's a rhetorical question. It's really like a taunt here. Okay, let's do, well, there's a couple here I'll mention. Shadow of your wings. right? Speaking of God, that's a zoomorphism, right? Another example of that. Also, keep me as the apple of the eye. That's an idiom. It refers to the pupil of the eye. And keep me as the apple of the eye. It's also an idiom expression of like protection. Okay, like you protect your eye, right? Especially the eyeball. So that's a picture of that. All right, let's do. Let's have one more here, and then we'll finish. Let's see, Noor, give the last one to you. All right. There's a few here, so tell me what you see.
Psalm 33, verse 18, behold, the eye of the Lord is on those who fear him, on those who hope for his loving kindness. The eye of the Lord.
Okay. What's that called? Does God have eyes?
No.
No.
Personification.
Yeah. Personification. There you go. No. Sorry. It's more specific. It's anthropomorphism. It's a human characteristic applied to God.
Anthropomorphism.
Yeah. What else do we see here? How about that word behold? What is that called?
Interjection.
Yeah, interjection. Okay.
Interjection.
All right, so I think that's it for this one. Okay. Now, I know that was that exercise may, is a challenge. Okay, I understand that. Some of these terms are very new to you. And so I'm sure as we're going through that, you're going, this is hard. I totally understand that. You're going to need to review these notes, and you may ask, well, how is this going to help me preach this poem? Like, I can't even pronounce synecdoche. I'm not gonna say, anthropomorphism in my sermon. I mean, and you shouldn't, because that's, but what this is, again, remember, as we've done before with epistles and then with narratives, with poetry, we look at the passage from different points of view, looking for different things in the process, right? We did parallelism. Okay, that's one step. We're doing the figurative language here. We're going to learn some other poetic devices next week. And
So Tim,
yeah,
what I realize also is actually I'm slowing down with my my interaction with you, but several times I was tempted to answer quickly, and I realize most of the time I assume that I know, and I generalize this figurative language of the Bible, when the reality is there are they have specific names. So I'm slowing down, and really the lesson that I'm getting is I have to really memorize this and be more sharp in detecting these various ways of expression in the Bible. It's really enlightening, Pastor Tim.
Yeah, and I think when we do this, it's forcing us to carefully examine the passage from we're looking for a different aspect now. We're looking for the figurative language. Maybe before we were examining parallelism. We're going to do word studies later. and diagramming. So we're going to do different things with the text, but we're trying to just like a diamond, you know, you look at every facet when you examine a diamond, and these steps are like that. And so as you begin to see the type of figurative language that the poet is using, that gives you insight into what the poet's wanting to say. Okay? Like, for example, when we looked at that one passage where it said that he'll hide us under his wings, and then he said, your faithfulness is a shield and bulwark. Okay? That figurative language, as I told you then, meant to give us two different images. Both speak of protection, but one is a tender, intimate protection. The other is a powerful protection. You need to see that and understand that if you're going to accurately teach that passage. You need to teach both parts of his protection, because that's what the poet's doing. And he uses, though, two different figures of speech to express that idea. All right. So, men, as you seek to be better informed of these different figures of speech, it's going to help you to better understand and interpret these poetic texts. And I've shown you a few examples. We'll see more where Hebrew poetry is used in the New Testament. I think I mentioned a few examples last week. We looked at Romans 8, neither height nor depth, neither angels nor principalities, things present, things to come. That's merism, right? He's using two opposites to convey totality. That's a poetic device that's meant to communicate emphasis, like everything, death or life, you know, those are opposites. Angels or demons, opposites. Height nor depth, opposites. So he's using their poetic language to convey in an emotional way this truth. It's not just nothing can separate us from the love of Christ. He's preaching there, and he's using this poetry to enhance the power and conviction and passion of the point he's making. So this is not just going to help us with studying, you know, the Psalms or Hebrew poetry. It will help you in studying poetry is all over the Bible, even in the New Testament. And so it will enhance your ability to do that. You know, using poetic devices will draw, you know, if you use it when you're preaching, it will draw your hearer's attention in a more powerful way. So as you learn these devices that are used by the biblical writers, you can begin to use them in your preaching. And they will enhance the effectiveness of your preaching. They will add creativity. They will add emotion. It will help you to be more engaged and connected, or help your hearers to be more engaged and connected with you as you use these poetic devices. I'm telling you, I think that will be a natural effect. You know, if you like Paul, he used merism there to convey you know, when you do that in your sermons, when, you know, that will add to the effectiveness of your message. Okay, so there's a lot of reasons that may not be clear right now, because you're like, oh, is this a synecdoche, personification, simile? What is this? I have no idea. Right now, that's how it feels, and I get that. But as you get more comfortable and familiar with these figures of speech that are used in Scripture, one, it helps you understand better what the poet's saying in that passage. Two, it will help convey the image and emotion that the poet conveys. And three, it'll help your preaching if you begin to adopt these different kinds of poetic devices in your preaching. Okay, so stay with it, guys. And we'll do more examples later. We're going to go through a psalm later on in our course. Just walk through an example. I gave you here just individual passages, which makes it a little harder because they're sort of out of context. So you don't get the full, like Pastor Noor, when you asked about that psalm, you know, when you read the whole psalm, I was like, oh, okay, now this makes more sense. So I know that made it more difficult to do this exercise, but just want to encourage you with that. All right.
Praise the Lord. Amen.
Amen.
Okay, guys. Let me ask Pastor Noor. Let's pray for our brother Anselmo for his birthday as we close our time together. So if you could do that and
Amen.
close our time in prayer, I'd appreciate that.